Councillors, it's been a long process, 18 months. And they can't say that we haven't given the matter of our long-term plan, of our 10-year budget, great consideration really over that period of time. It's been exhaustive. Today I'm going to present to you my revised mayoral proposal on the basis of the considerations that we've had over the last 18 months, but in particular after listening to the community. Since my draft proposal in August last year, we have undergone a very, very thorough discussion with our communities, and at times very intense, with a number of robust debates. And I believe that the 10-year budget that I'm tabling today reflects the conversations that we have had with tens of thousands of Aucklanders and reflects a balance relating to that conversation. But I think at the start, I think it's important just to reflect about that process. We've just carried out the biggest conversation with Auckland, achieving the largest response rate in any LTP process either here or around the nation. We delivered the long-term plan summary to every household. We carried out, as you know, a full media and social media campaign. There wasn't a place that people weren't aware, including walking down around the bottom of Queen Street, that this process was going on. We replaced traditional hearings with 37 Have Your Say events, and you all attended many of those. And we caught up with the digital revolution at last, and are now speaking to Aucklanders through Twitter and Facebook. So by the close of consultation, we'd received 260,000 pieces of feedback from 27,383 written submissions, 10,200 pieces of feedback from 2,300 people at Have Your Say events and community events, and we engaged, on top of that, as per our recommendation, with a further 5,000 people in at least 11-minute conversations with every single one of them in the independent Colmar-Brunton survey on transport options. No one can say that we didn't have a chance to have their say, and I want to, on behalf of you all, extend to Stephen, to Maddie, to all of those who are involved in that process, a huge thank you. It was an amazing piece of work, and councillors, I think it's appropriate that we put our hands together for the staff who were involved in this. They did a stunning job. Stephen, to all of those. It really was mammoth. We basically knocked down half of Hunua in doing it, but there you go.
No carries.
No carries, though. That's exactly right. Well done. To recap on the messages that came through loud and clear from the residents of Auckland, they should come as no surprise. They want financial prudence. One, keep the rates low and the debt levels low and well managed. They also want to, on the counter side, us to continue to invest in the things they value. Not always the same things, of course. The most resounding message, and the one that we most needed, they want us to invest to fix our transport. And the vast majority of Aucklanders said they are prepared to dip into their pockets to do so. More on that later. Those of you who were around 4 years ago will remember the 2012 process well. Back then we had little time for innovation as we worked through the exacting task of combining 8 budgets and 8 sets of policies and systems. But this 10-year budget is not merely an accounting exercise. This is about basically pushing the reset button. It's now time to put the priorities of the legacy councils firmly behind us. In 4 years we've achieved much and come a long way. But now it's time to create our own future based on Auckland as it exists today and how we would like to see it develop. We have a single blueprint for that future, the Auckland Plan, to guide our priority setting. And we have a set of financial parameters that drive the need to prioritise our spending. We're now in the enviable position of having steered the ship in a direction we want to go and know how we're going to get there. 215 LTP is our first real chance to build the city that our communities want. We get to truly play shape and make a real difference to this great city. We have some big decisions to make today and in the few days ahead through the next week as we want to meet our community's expectations. Before we look at the details of the proposal, I want to look at where we've arrived at over the past 18 months. You all know that I set the organisation a pretty huge challenge in August last year. From the previous long-term plan, I wanted our organisation to reduce and refocus our capital program and to reduce some operating costs. Despite the cries from some corners of a pending budget doom, it's turned out to be quite the opposite. We are in great financial shape. We've delivered a balanced budget each and every year for the last 5, not a deficit to be seen despite lower rate increases at each year. We have retained as a consequence of that our AA rating, better than any NZ banks. And we are carefully implementing the largest CapEx program in the history of Auckland. Not that you would note that from some comments that we've had to put up with over the last day or two. Let's take a glance at the numbers under this new budget proposal. The proposal achieves what I set out to achieve, keeping the average rate increase in the first year to 2.5. With 3.2 increase in year 2 and 3.5 in the out years. Well down on the 4.9% set for those years in the 2012 LTP. Our asset base will grow from 41 billion in 2014-15 to 58 billion by the end of this 10-year budget period. Debt will move down from a forecast 13.7 billion to 11.4 billion by 2025, a reduction of 17% from the current 10-year plan. A 10-year capital expenditure program of 18.5 billion, including 12.5 billion on new assets, alongside 6 billion on the renewal of existing assets. And we, at the same time, are keeping our interest to revenue ratio at our agreed 12% or less over that 10-year period. These are great sustainable financial parameters against which we can start or continue the process of investment, change and transformation of the city. So I want to look into the detail of what this all means for some of the most important areas of our business. At the end of any long-term plan or annual plan consultation process, Council is often faced with two competing messages. In our case, spend more money on key infrastructure, particularly transport, but don't increase the income from our rates or debts to do this. So, it's a very difficult balancing act. You will see from the proposal that I've tabled today that there is a minimal change from the draft budget the public consulted on, with the clear exception of transport. So as I travel around the region, as you travel around the region, as we all go around the region, the message is always the same. Fix our transport mess. And we know that it is becoming even more challenging. The roads are becoming more congested as our people are increasingly shifting to public transport, so the time is critical for us to act. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say we are duty-bound to act now and in so doing make a real difference to our Aucklanders' everyday lives. So what we have heard loud and clear from the Aucklanders during this consultation should come as absolutely no surprise. They're sick of the traffic jams, and there is an economic cost to congestion, but also an emotional one. Congestion costs business an estimated $1.6 billion in lost productivity a year because their trucks are moving 5 times a day rather than 10. But it also costs us time with our families. It sucks up our precious weekends, and quite frankly, it makes us as a city more grumpy than we need to be. Whether you turn to the LTP submissions or the Colmar-Brunton survey or even the AA's own research, people have told us what they want. They want us to get on with building the Auckland Planned Transport Network. 50% of respondents in our LTP consultation, plus 58% in the Colmar-Brunton survey, opted for the advanced plan. It's so important to them that they are on top of that, prepared to put their monies where their mouth is. Of the two options that the Independent Advisory Board proposed for filling the funding gap, there was obvious support for a motorway user charge, a motorway toll. It was the preferred option over rates and fuel tax, and both of those consultation and survey with a strong showing of 57% across all of our communities in Colmar, Brunton poll. We've always known, however, that introducing such a charge wasn't an overnight job or easy. To begin with, we need to continue our discussions with government, and government has given a reasonably clear signal that they are willing to engage on the issue of Transport Accord, and I will be delivering out around you today a copy of a letter received from the Minister of Transport, basically acknowledging my letter to him, as you'll be aware, acknowledging that the government and he are happy to engage on the issue of the development of a Transport Accord, and secondly, will await the outcome of our LTP discussions and just are interested in how much skin we're prepared to put in the game. And given the very clear position articulated by Aucklanders, I'm hopeful and confident that the government will remain engaged and will deliver us an outcome that our people have said they would like to see. Alongside that work, up to 2 years of very critical, detailed technical work to build one of the world's biggest network charges. The problem is Aucklanders have made it clear they aren't in the mood for waiting anymore either. It's for this reason that today I am proposing an interim solution over the next 3 years based on a time-specific targeted transport rate and an accelerated transport program. Specifically, for 3 years, this would mean an additional $2 per week for residential ratepayers and for business, $3 a week. Combined with NZTA contributions and some borrowing, we will be able to raise $179 million a year for 3 years each year to start solving Auckland's biggest problem. And all this without breaching our 12% interest to revenue ratio cap. This will give us the ability to respond to Aucklanders and get things moving while we formalise a long-term solution. It also ties in perfectly from a decision-making perspective with our 10-year budget cycle. It is not the $300 million that we would get from either of those two options, but it is a healthy and generous start. I would like us to be moving faster, but I think this is a pragmatic solution to our most significant challenge, but most of all the sort of get stuff done decision making that Aucklanders are demanding of us and have asked for the last 5 years. So what will this interim transport program look like? It will of course include Auckland's #1 transport priority, the CRL. As you know, this is in both the basic and Auckland Plan programs, and it's there for a good reason. Our train network is almost at capacity. We are growing at 1 million rail trips every 3 months, and we'll reach the government's target by early 2017 instead of 2020. We need to get on with it, and we are. So what else would this interim program deliver? Busways to the north and northwest. An increase in walking and cycling funding across the whole city from $14 million in the next 3 years to $124 million, which includes $75 million from the government and NZTA. A much needed increase in our network-wide safety program from $28 million to over 3 years to $111 million. We will bring forward the Pukekohe interchange and bus interchange improvements in places like Otahu and Manukau. Electrification of Pukekohe. Accelerate park and rides at Papakura, Westgate and Silverdale. Deliver Tamaki Drive and Ngāpipi safety and amenity improvements. I want to see priority given to funding some improvements on Lake Road in the interim transport budget. It's a bit of a summary, but even if I read the whole list, we would need to do a whole lot more than that, and we know. I do want to note, though, that I'm also recommending we prioritise road sealing in Rodney. This has to be a budget for the whole of the city. I propose lifting the current $3 million over 3 years to $10 million. This is to make sure benefits of the transport levy are felt across the region. But what this interim transport budget does is give us significant improvements to get on with and get our teeth stuck into, while we tie down the details of a long-term sustainable future with the government. I commend this proposal to our Aucklanders, to the government, and in particular to you all. Now for other key areas of Council's business. Auckland development. Here's where we look at a cluster of activities that include planning and policy, the waterfront, and our property business. To put that in numbers, $2.1 billion, or 5% of our total expenditure. I proposed a funding envelope reduction of 7%, with most of that from our planning and policy activity, with the unitary plan an exception to this, of course. Thank you. And I'm still comfortable with this approach. They've done well. Economic and cultural development. It's no secret I want Auckland firmly on the map as the world's most livable city, and we are doing well in that frame. This is not just about the Crown, this is about building a city that truly connects us to world and creates jobs for our young people. AT is tasked with this very important job, and I'm happy to see they have reprioritised their resources to conclude a significant Māori event and a greater focus on creating jobs for our youth. Environmental management and regulation. We all value the wonderful environment we live in. Councillor Quacks, it's great to see you here. Welcome back. So much of what we do is targeted at protecting that environment, the shift to public transport, electrification, rail, and building a more compact city.